Hey guys, I wanted to take you through the instructions for our last assessment in Pre-Calc 2. We're going to give you as much time as possible considering the end of the year coming up. So we're going to put this out week 7 and we'll post the deadline for when it is. There'll also be an additional video following this going through an exemplar from years past so you guys can get in the right mindset of how it's going to work. So what we've been doing for the last 3 weeks is working on periodic functions. And so your final task will be taking some of these periodic functions that we've talked about, and we started doing some in context, and doing a little bit of research about your own interest in periodic phenomena. And we'll give you some suggestions at the end as to where to go. But basically, all of the phenomena mentioned, Ferris wheels, sound waves, daylight, moon phases, tides especially, can be modeled in periodic patterns. We witness these in everyday lives. Sun rises and falls, we have seasons, we have cycles of weather, rush hour traffic. They exist all around us, and it's important because we need to use these to predict outcomes in the future. This project will require you to use your knowledge of graphing and interpreting trigonometric functions to identify and interpret a natural periodic phenomenon. Creating models of these phenomena help make sense of what we are seeing. So your final product will be built up of a research phenomenon and a model. You'll need to demonstrate your ability to make sense of the data, be able to model it in various ways, and make multiple connections based on the evidence you find. We're going to ask you to make a multimedia presentation explaining your phenomena and its model, including its significance and possible limitations. So let's get to the bullet points. What your submission must include is either a Google slideshow, PowerPoint, Prezi, or a write-up detailing the periodic phenomenon you have investigated. If possible, and I know we all have technology limitations, we're looking for you to do a 5 to 6 minute oral presentation over the slides, as we can't have you in class presenting. It would be great to hear your voices and your explanation, and rather than allow us to read into possible interpretations of what your slides or posters may show versus what is intended. You should have an introductory paragraph or an introductory, I don't want to say speech, but introduction, verbal introduction, explaining your periodic phenomenon and an overview. So the key points we are looking for is a graph that models your periodic phenomenon, your identification of the independent and dependent variables, your identification of the period of the situation and what that means in your situation, the midline of your situation and what that means in your situation, and the amplitude and what that means in your situation. You should have a graph of the function. If you've collected data points, it should be a scatter plot with the function graphed over it. Ideally, this will be completed on Desmos or some other graphing utility, and you need to make sure your axes are labeled and are on a scale that makes sense. So if your period is 12 and your scale is 0 to 2 pi, that's not going to make sense. So make sure that your scale makes sense. Once you've got all that, you should be able to summarize your findings. Why is it important to be able to model your phenomenon with an equation and a graph? Why might someone use this? Do you believe your model is perfect? If not, what are some of the limitations? And is there any way to reduce the limitations? How and why is your particular model useful? And then we're going to ask you to extrapolate whether or not you are confident your model could work in the future with a prediction point beyond your graph's domain. So outside of your graph's domain, you're going to choose a point to put into your equation to make a prediction on the future, regardless of how confident you are of your model. So these are the key things you should be solid in going into this task. And if you're not or need help, make sure you reach out to myself or Mr. Mercier to make sure that you are set up and going to be successful on this. So you should be able to identify the phenomena that have periodic behavior. You should be able to identify all the components of a periodic function: the period, the amplitude, the phase shift, the midline. Your ability to model periodic phenomena with a trig function and understand limitations. And you should be able to make a formal presentation of your findings. We've been doing this all year, so this should be pretty simple in terms of the presentation. So we put together a list of some of the options. So we've done tide height. You did a problem on that. Mr. Mercier had the video that showed the Bay of Nova Scotia. Daily temperature by hour and how that fluctuates. Yearly temperature by month. We've done a lot with Ferris wheels heights. The energy bill cost by month. Sound waves, harmonic motion, phases of the moon, if you're into astronomy or science, hours of daylight by month. We did a problem on Denver and compared that to Seattle. And if there is something else you'd like that you know of this periodic, just let us know so we can verify that, yes, you are on the right path and that's good to go. For the tides, temperature, Ferris wheel, energy, hours of daylight, harmonic motion, you may choose any location in the world to gather your data. So if there's a place that you're thinking of moving to or you wanted to visit, or someplace that has a particular interest to you, feel free to use that location. You do not all have to do Concord, New Hampshire. So that is the overview outline of the project. So let's take a look at the rubric competencies. So the first one is graph and analyze. And throughout this, as I've done all year, I'm only going to talk about the 3 and the 4. 3 is the confident. That's what you should be shooting for. For those of you who want to go above and beyond to the extension, the advanced 4, you need to complete everything in the 3 in addition to what's in the 4. So for graph and analyze, you need to have an accurately stated period, midline, amplitude of your situation and what that means in your situation, as well as a graph that accurately models your periodic phenomenon. So from your past assessment, this is your ability to graph as in question 1, then to identify what each of the points mean as in questions 3 and 4. To get the 4, we got to make sure we have all the attention to precision in there. We got your axes are scaled and labeled correctly. If you have collected data points, we have a scatter plot, and then your graph is drawn over the scatter plot. You're not running a regression. You're creating an equation from your period, midline, amplitude, phase shift, and putting in your data table, and then your equation that you've created, and seeing how accurate they are without a specific R-squared value. You don't need to do a regression. Create and build. This is about your equation. Were you able to create an accurate equation of your periodic function? And for the 4, you have that accurate function and you provided your domain and range. To solve and evaluate, this has to do with your extrapolation. You're using your equation now to make a prediction outside of your collected data. And for the 4, you can use that equation to make that prediction, and you provide a contextual explanation of what your solution means. And finally, interpret and apply. Your summary answers all of the outlined questions with accuracy and specificity. For the 4, your summary has a well-developed understanding of what periodic functions are and the accurate use of mathematical vocabulary. So you're not saying the high point and the low point. We're talking about the minimum and maximum of the amplitude based on the midline. We're not talking about it moved left, it moved right. We're talking about a horizontal phase shift. So using that mathematical vocabulary that we've been using all throughout this unit. So that's it. That's what we're looking for. Remember, if you're doing a slideshow with any presentation, we're looking at bullets, and then your voice is filling in those bullets. We don't want to see the slideshows with paragraphs written and you're just reading from the screen. Again, if there's any technology issues, feel free to reach out to us. We just want to try and hear your voices one last time and make sure that we understand what you're talking about rather than having us infer based on your slides what you mean. Next video will be an exemplar from years past and one that I've created for you. Good luck, and again, don't hesitate to reach out to myself or Mr. Mercier. Thank you.